Welcome to our podcast, Beyond the Glass Ceiling, with Aparna Desai. Today, we have an extraordinary guest with us, someone who embodies resilience, expertise, and leadership in the world of finance. Meet Senior Finance Manager Prathima. A certified chartered accountant with a Bachelor of Commerce honors in accountancy, she is also a certified IFRS and GST specialist. With a passion for global project management, she pursued a PMP from PMI and completed her post-graduation in general management from IIM Vizag. With an impressive 20-year career spanning auditing, taxation, accounting, cost management, and treasury functions, Prathima has been at the forefront of finance leadership. At HP, she has played a pivotal role in driving digital transformation, process improvements, and delivering significant financial savings for finance global operations. And in the past year, she has taken on a new challenge in business finance within the service supply chain. Beyond her professional achievements, Prathima is a dedicated mother to her 9-year-old twin daughters, a fitness enthusiast, and an avid reader and traveler. Her personal motto? Burn like a sun to shine like a sun. A perfect reflection of her relentless drive and commitment to excellence. In this episode, we'll dive into her journey, the lessons she's learned, and how she continues to break barriers in finance and leadership. So, get ready to be inspired. Let's welcome Prathima to Beyond Breaking the Glass Ceiling.
So, good morning, Prathima. First of all, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and being a part of this podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast as a guest today.
Thank you, Parna. I should really thank you first because for me, it's like this podcast is first of its kind. I would say I truly appreciate the opportunity which you would give me here in this forum, wherein I can share my thoughts on diversity, inclusion, and breaking the glass ceiling. So it's a very interesting topic to talk also. So thank you so much for that, Aparna.
Great. So, Prathima, I have got a few questions for you, and I would really appreciate your inputs. I'm sure they are going to inspire a lot of women who are going to be our listeners for this podcast. Okay, so shall we get started?
Absolutely.
All right. So, in one of our earlier talks, when we connected, you mentioned that you have been quite vocal about gender equality. So, what inspired your passion for advocating gender equality, and how do you define breaking the glass ceiling? If you can share some thoughts.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think over the years, what I have really seen and observed, gender equality is such an important thing, and we should really give due importance and talk about it, right? So my passion for advocating gender equality comes from recognizing the pervasive barriers that women and marginalized genders face in professional, educational, and social spheres. So I have heard a lot of stories on resilience, personal observations, and have witnessed unfair treatment as well, which has fueled the desire in me to promote equity and inclusion, I would say. And when it comes to what breaking the glass ceiling means to me, I think it's a very broader term, but for me it means that we should be overcoming the invisible yet entrenched barriers that women and underrepresented groups face in today's world, right? So the ceiling may be formed by biases, by unequal opportunities, or maybe by systematic discrimination as well. So breaking it means challenging the norms, enabling access to opportunities, and fostering an environment where talent and effort, not gender or identity, define success. So I can give you a few examples in politics, corporate leadership, and sports space. So let me start with politics. I think for me, Kamala Harris is one of the greatest examples. So as the first female, first Black, first South Asian Vice President of the United States, Kamala shattered long-standing barriers in American politics. In the field of corporate leadership, what names comes in my mind is Mary Barra. I think as the first female CEO of General Motors, Mary Barra broke into historically male-dominated automotive industries. And last but not the least, in field of sports, what more than Serena Williams, one of the greatest tennis players of all time. I think Williams faced and overcome racial and gender-based biases, proving that women, especially Black women, can dominate in sports and advocate for equity. So these are the few things which I wanted to share as with examples that what does breaking the glass ceiling means to me today.
What a lovely answer, Prathima. And I really like the examples that you give because these are names which are very familiar with the crowd in general. And I really like the word invisible that you mentioned, because yes, it is quite invisible. We talk a lot about glass ceiling, but conceptually, for women to understand this is very important. And your answer really, uncovers, the definition of it. Great. So we'll move on. So my next question, you mentioned that true leadership involves redesigning systems to work for everyone. So can you elaborate on how leaders can actively redesign the systems? What leaders should do in a way that it works for people in general and not our gender centric?
Absolutely, Aparna. I think I will give you three cases, but for me, redesigning systems for inclusivity requires leaders to challenge the status quo. Number one, intentionally remove barriers and create opportunities for marginalized voices. Now, how can they do so? So there are three things which I want to call out. First is we can assess and audit the existing systems, which means that leaders need to review organizational structures, policies, and practices to identify hidden biases and inequities. So this might include hiring processes, pay structures, promotion patterns, and decision-making protocols. So one example I could give is conducting a pay equity audit to ensure equal compensation for equal work, regardless of gender, race, or other identities. Second could be like establish accountability metrics, which means that leaders can tie performance reviews and bonuses to diversity and inclusion goals. So creating data-driven accountability ensures sustained progress, which is what I feel. And I don't know whether you are aware, but Intel actually they publicly shares its diversity metrics and holds executives accountable for meeting inclusion and hiring goals. And it's really inspiring. I really get inspired with Intel. And the third is build leadership pipelines. I think invest in mentorship, sponsorship programs, and leadership development initiative for underrepresented groups. So in PepsiCo Women of Color Alliance focuses on preparing women of color for senior roles. So this is a very dedicated initiatives which Pepsi takes. So these are the few examples which I wanted to give. Like, it's not impossible. It's just about taking the first step. Few things already organizations are doing, but few things they can do it more with more engagement and more activeness.
Great. There are some great examples you mentioned. I'm sure if organizations listen to the podcast, they get some ideas on how they can redesign their systems. It's so wonderful.
So, yeah, sure.
Great. So, Pratima, you yourself have climbed the ladder to success, right? You have reached to a stage where, you are at a leadership position, you have a team under you. So, in your opinion, why is diversity in leadership so critical for organization growth? What are your thoughts on that?
Super critical, Aparna. I think it's super critical, and for me, diversity in leadership for organizational growth and innovation brings, lot of wider range of perspective, experiences, and problem-solving approaches, I would say. So when leaders come from diverse backgrounds, they are better equipped to understand varied customer needs and adapt to global markets. And they also foster inclusive work culture, which is so important in today's era, right? So they think differently. That sparks creative solutions as well. Homogeneous leadership, in my view, leads to groupthink, which can negatively impact business. I think groupthink is not a good thing because we don't think creatively, right? So a few examples, like, again, I'm a strong believer in examples. So research by Boston Consulting Group, found that companies with diverse management teams generate 19% of, I would say, higher innovation revenue. So Procter & Gamble success is creating culturally relevant products like hair care for Black consumers, I think was driven by diverse leadership teams attuned to those markets. So it's really very important. In fact, I don't know whether you're aware of the McKinsey study, which showed that companies with diverse executive boards outperform their peers on return on equity by 53%. So these are a few examples. And then I would also want to mention that attracting and retaining talent also is important point when we have diversified culture, because organizations with diverse leaderships are more appealing to top talent. Employees are more likely to stay. Employees are more likely to stay when they see leaders who represent their identities and experiences, right? So it's all very important. In fact, Salesforce as a company, their inclusive leadership practices have made it one of the most desirable employers globally because of their amazing diversity, I would say, practices they have in their own company.
Wow, great. We're hearing so many examples. We're hearing so many numbers, which is obvious you come from the finance background. So we are ought to hear a lot of numbers. But that's a great insight, Pratima. And I do
Thank you.
believe, yes, if there are people with diversity in a group, there's more creativity, there's more solutions that come to the table. So absolutely, it helps organizations to grow faster.
Yeah.
Right. But my point here is that, a lot of organizations, some of the names that you also mentioned in your answers, they talk about diversity, they talk about gender equality, but they are more like initiatives. Like, they want to, it's an initiative or a problem they want to solve. But have you ever come across any organization where this is like a core value, or should it be a core value in general for organizations?
Yes, I think there are a lot of examples. I think to truly view inclusion as a core value rather than a checkbox activity, organizations need to first embed into their culture, strategy, and leadership practices. It's not just driving initiatives. This requires shifting perspective from compliance to genuine engagement. I think where D&I are seen as drivers of innovation, performance, and long-term success. Few things which I can really call out is like they can build that in their inclusive vision statement. How is like inclusion should be part of the organization missions and values, not just an isolated program. So they must communicate, or leaders must communicate its importance as central to the company's identity and purpose. For example, Ben and Jerry, right? I'll give you the example because that integrates social justice, including racial equity, into its brand mission, influencing every decision from product development to marketing campaign. I had gone through this case study and it was really good. So I thought I'll call this out. Second is, embed inclusion into business operations. How can they do that? So they can ensure that inclusion informs decisions across all departments, from marketing to supply chain management and product design. So companies like Apple, they design accessible products by engaging employees with disabilities in the development process. I don't know whether you're aware, but in Apple manufacturing setup, they hire a lot of people with disabilities as well, giving more importance to those sector. And recognize and celebrate success. I think this is very important. Who doesn't need recognition? Who doesn't need motivation? So I think publicly acknowledge inclusive achievements, both big and small, to show that inclusion is valued. So we can hold inclusion awards or showcase stories of diverse team, how they have achieved their success through by inclusivity. So these are the three things which I wanted to call out. How can they really actualize D&I?
Absolutely. I think it's a need of an hour because at Venture also we do a lot of digitalization of induction courses where companies talk about honesty, transparency, but we haven't come across any organization as yet that talks about gender equality as a core value, and we really wish that that's the way forward for organizations. So great examples again. All right. Now, whatever we talked about till now is more towards what organizations can do. But at a personal level, as a woman, there are some challenges that a woman also face, right? So I know from earlier conversation that we have had that you faced imposter syndrome. So can we talk more about it? What advice would you like to give to women who are facing similar feelings, and how can they overcome it? What's your experience? Let's touch base on that first.
Well, this is such a important and topic close to my heart, because I'm sure imposter syndrome is something which everybody faces, right? Whether in the initial phase of the career or even if they are experienced as well. So it's nothing new. So for me, I would say that we need to really manage those feelings and build the confidence to thrive in it, right? For example, first you acknowledge and normalize the feeling. Okay, say understand that imposter syndrome is common. Many accomplished people, including leaders, experience it. Feeling like you don't belong is not a reflection of your actual abilities. So always remember that if you are in the room, you deserve to be there. So that thought process should be coming. Second is, we can build a personal brag file, like, I used to, make a list of my achievements, positive feedbacks, and successful projects which I have driven, which actually gave me a lot of confidence that, of course, I have done good things, excellent things in my life, and what is there to do self-doubt about it? So that's something which I used to do. And then, of course, seeking out mentorship and sponsorship. So connect with supportive mentors who actually have navigated similar challenges and can offer guidance and perspective. So for me, sponsorship, mentorship have really played a very phenomenal role in fueling my career growth. So we should look for sponsors within our organizations who can elevate your visibility for key opportunities. So that's very important. And then, of course, just focus on growth and not perfection. So I would say that shift your mindset from I need to be perfect to I need to keep learning. So that actually I used to practice. So mistakes are part of the progress. Keep track of the lessons learned instead of just simply focusing on mistakes made. So all in all, what I feel, you belong to in every room you enter, right? So if you are the part of the board or the corporate governance committee, you are there because you deserve to be there. So the fact that you are there means you have earned it, and challenge may feel insurmountable at times, but success is built by those who persist despite fear and doubt. So keep showing up, keep speaking up, and know that every small step forward is a victory. So all these things I used to do, practice, and it's not easy. Over a period of time, I used to get overwhelmed as well, but I feel that if you really do this mindfully, these things which I told you, overcoming imposter syndrome is not a big challenge.
Right. So first of all, if I have to, summarize this, first of all, don't have self-doubt, have self-confidence in you that you deserve to be there, and be persistent in whatever initiative you are taking, whatever things you are doing, and then you can definitely come out of this syndrome. Right?
Absolutely.
And then, can you share some strategies or things that have worked for you in breaking the glass ceiling and going up the ladder? Are there anything? So yeah, we spoke about self-confidence. We spoke about, being persistent. But what else can women do? Or, they can practice so that they climb up the ladder? Because in general, if you observe, women reach till a certain level in their career, and after that there is a break, and that's why this concept of glass ceiling is in picture. So what strategies do you think will work for them in your experience?
Well, breaking through the glass ceiling and securing leadership roles requires a combination of many things. So I would really call out three. I think it could be a combination of strategic action, self-advocacy, which people don't talk about, and continuous development. So I think mastering the core skills and continuous learning is so important. Becoming an expert in my field was foundational. I prioritize developing not only technical skills but also leadership, communication, and strategic thinking. So staying curious and proactive about emerging trends in the industry is so important. I would say that always continuously develop your skills, and don't just be static in whatever you're doing. You have to have that curiosity in your mind, right? What's new? What's next? Right. Second is build a very strong personal brand. I think personal branding is so important into this world. How should people know you? Right. I made sure that my work, values, and contributions were visible and impactful. People might work, but they might not be visible around. Right. How will others know you? So this included speaking up in the meetings, sharing ideas confidently, and taking ownership of key projects. So by building the strong personal brand, I did try to climb up in my career. And third is I did take a lot of risk and stretch assignments. I think it was really overwhelming sometimes, but it did help me. I volunteered for challenging roles and projects that were outside my comfort zone, even when I doubted my readiness, right? This experiences built credibility and actually expanded my skills. So I think it's a combination of, it's not just about ambition, it's about strategy, self-advocacy, and resilience. So we also should always remember that visibility, value, and voice are the keys to lasting leadership success. So if you don't have a voice and you are just doing what you're supposed to do, I don't think people will ever hear you. So you need to really speak up, be vocal about what you are doing, self-advocate, and I'm sure breaking the glass ceiling will not be a tough task.
Yeah, I completely agree with this, Pratima, and I really like the word be visible, because a lot of the times what happens is people expect that they are doing their work and they should get the appreciation. But if you're not visible, how is the person going to know, or how is the organization going to know what you're doing? So that's a very, very important aspect, be visible. So I really loved it. Thanks for sharing. Great. Now, a very important question here. So, the very basic reason of why women take a back step in their career is their life, personal life, because career and personal life go hand in hand in parallel. And then when women reach a stage where they become mother, or they get married, so sometimes it has happened, or I don't know, maybe we can say most of the times it happens that career is takes a back step, and then personal life takes drives the whole life for them, right? So you are a great example. You're parenting two twin girls. So how did you manage it all? How did you balance your career as well as your parenting?
I think this question is so close to my heart once again because it touches more personal aspect, and I really this answer might be a little long, but I really want to share this. So balancing career ambitions while parenting twin girls were both challenging and transformative for me. I really want to use the word transformative because I not only just evolved as a mother, but also as a great, or I would say, very confident individual to what I am today, right? So it not only shaped my leadership style but also deepened my personal growth in meaningful ways. I think a few things which I wanted to call out, like mastering time management and prioritization. So juggling a demanding career with parenting taught me how to focus on what truly matters and delegate effectively. I became skilled at setting clear priorities and saying no where necessary. So the lesson which I always used to I learned is time is finite. Focus on tasks that have the highest impact and trust your team with responsibility. So this parenting really taught me, to prioritize my work and give value to time because time is finite. Second is empathy and compassion as leadership pillars. What happened is parenting twins required understanding their unique needs, personalities, and emotions. This carried over into my leadership as well, making me more empathetic and attentive leader, right? So how attentive we have to be, right, with kids. I'm sure you also know, Aparna, but it's not
Yes.
it's not easy as well. So the lessons which I learned is people perform their best when they feel understood and valued, right? So I started listening more deeply to my team and considering their perspective before making decision. And all this, I think my daughters only taught me, I would say, the patience and to be a good listener, right? And third is letting go of perfectionism. So I want my message to all the women out there is, we cannot be perfect, right? But we can always, aspire for it and keep working towards it. So with twins, I realized perfection was impossible. I learned to embrace imperfection while still striving for excellence. So progress, I think as a leader, I became more comfortable with iterative improvements and empowering others to own their outcomes. So for me, it was not just I have to do everything today with perfect 100% perfect outcome. I always believe in iterative performance. You do today, do little, do with quality. So I think balancing overall, if I have to conclude, balancing career ambitions and parenting twins taught me that leadership is about adaptability, authenticity, and humanity. So my daughters inspired me, I think inspired me and inspires me today as well to lead with purpose and compassion. So knowing that success isn't defined solely by in professional achievement, but also by the legacy of empathy and empowerment you leave behind. So it's not just about what you achieve today as an individual, but what legacy you leave around in the community you live is very important. So I think parenting with twin girls, as I told, was challenging and transformative. And I also told, how I was able to transform myself. So it was
Absolutely.
really
It
a
must
great
have
journey.
truly shaped your leadership style. It must have truly shaped your personal growth. So that's quite inspiring. I completely agree. It completely resonates with my own story, because with motherhood comes patience, with motherhood comes adaptability. And those are the things you can use as strengths in your career. So it's not vice versa, that motherhood doesn't bring weakness to you. It indeed brings, positive traits in you and highlights them for your career. So great point, great point. Loving it. I'm loving this conversation. I'm loving the examples. The story is so inspiring. Wow. All right. So we are all humans, and we make mistakes. So I'm very keen to know if you had any failure in your career journey, and if yes, how did you overcome it? What lessons did you learn, and how it helped you in your growth, or did it help? How it helped? What's your learning from there?
So I think I should start this by saying that, failure isn't the opposite of success. It's a prerequisite for it. So before I even answer this question, because I always feel that people take failure so negatively, but I always feel that failure is always a stepping stone towards the success and the destination you are aiming for. So one of the most pivotal failure in my leadership journey was early on when I took on a critical project that required cross-department collaboration. I believe that sheer hard work and technical expertise would guarantee success to me. What I underestimated was, however, was the importance of communications, buy-ins, and relationship building. So I really underestimated these factors, and I was focused only on my hard work and my technical expertise. So through this, what happened is, I realized that no matter how skilled you are, success hinges on how well you communicate, collaborate, and engage with others. So I became intentionally about I became intentional about fostering trust and transparency with stakeholders, and empowered my team to own aspect of cross-functional engagement. Because definitely the project which I was working, and with the experience I carried, maybe at that point in time, the project was actually close to shrinkage with my, I would say my thought process of believing only in yourself and not in the team. So that made me learn to empower, not to micromanage. I initially took on too much on myself rather than trusting the team to lead certain tasks, which limited productivity and morale. So all this actually, what happened is like this, all failures, and it's an important project which I was working. It actually demanded attention at the VP level as well, but I never gave up. What I tried to I actually, the best part is I realized that I was not in the right direction. So, but I quickly understood that and I learned from it. So that failure reshaped my approach in leadership as well, teaching me the importance of collaboration, humility, and proactive communication. So the project ultimately succeeded after course correction, and I emerged as a stronger and more empathetic leader. So that's the reason I told you, right? Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's a prerequisite for it. What matters most is how you adapt, learn, and apply for those lessons moving forward. So we should not be sticky towards failures. Oh, I failed, I will never succeed at all. Important thing is like we should keep learning from those failures.
Absolutely. So you should never give up. Instead, you should take it as a learning. And in your case, and what clearly comes out is the interpersonal skills that helped you come back and do the project as a great success. So absolutely. I think as humans, we need that kind of collaboration. We need that kind of emotional touch to whatever we are doing along with the team, so that it moves us, closer to our success.
Yes,
Perfect.
yes, Aparna, I agree with you.
Great. So, Pratima, in a lot of your answers, you mentioned about mentorship, you mentioned about advocacy. So, which I believe is very central to your journey. So, in your opinion, what leaders should do to create a culture which is driven by mentorship? What can be some of the actions?
Okay, I think again a very good question, I would say, because as you called out, this mentorship and sponsorship is such close to my heart. These topics, because I myself have had benefited a lot from it. So creating a culture of mentorship within an organization is, I think, one of the most impactful ways to develop talent, foster inclusion, and drive long-term successes. So mentorship is not just about pairing a senior leader with a junior employee. It's about building an environment where learning, guidance, and advocacy are consistently available and encouraged across all levels. So a few things which I can really call out is like which can make this entire mentorship thing more effective within an organization is lead by example. So as a leader, the first step is to model mentorship behavior. So when a senior leader makes time to mentor others and demonstrate a commitment to guiding the next generation, it sets the tone for the entire organization, I would say. So make mentorship a visible priority by sharing personal stories of how mentorship shaped your own growth. So this should be one important thing I think anybody, any organization should actually approach all senior leaders to do. All right. And make mentorship accessible and inclusive. So instead of limiting mentorship programs to only top performers or specific demographics, I think it should be accessible to everyone, particularly marginalized groups. So encourage reverse mentoring, where younger or less experienced employees can mentor senior leaders on newer perspectives, newer technologies, because Generation G, they would have more brighter ideas. So reverse mentoring is also so important. And third is recognize and reward mentorship. So I think make mentorship a core value by recognizing and rewarding those who mentor others. So this could include formal recognition in performance reviews, or awards for outstanding mentors, or public acknowledgement during team meetings. So all this can really help in the entire, I would say, objective of mentorship, or how we can build a more solid mentorship program. So a culture of mentorship is built on the understanding that growth happens collectively when mentorship is ingrained in an organization DNA. So when I'm just emphasizing this word, it should be ingrained in the organization DNA. It empowers employees to thrive, leaders to grow, and the company to succeed. So this was the word which I really want to emphasize on, that how important it is. Like, mentorship should not be taken just like an initiative, but it should be ingrained in the DNA of the organization.
Absolutely. And I think you had also mentioned previously that leaders should not just talk, but also act. So, is there anything that the leaders can do to sponsor talent that is underrepresented, or is there any other way all the employees or all the people they're working with feel the same about their mentorship? Is there any other thought apart from whatever you have shared till now?
Yes, I think talking isn't enough. As you rightly said, organization must take tangible actions to truly support underrepresented talent. So, few actions which comes in my mind is like, first, create a structured mentorship program. So, organizations should establish formal mentorship programs specifically focused on underrepresented groups. So, this program should match mentors with mentees based on shared goals and career path, providing a clear structure for meetings, feedbacks, and goal setting. So it can be more structured rather than just being a normal mentorship program. Second is implement sponsorship, not just mentorship. So sponsorship goes beyond mentorship by actively advocating for the talent, ensuring that they are considered for promotions, high visibility projects, and leadership roles. So that's how it's like mentorship and sponsorship goes hand in gloves, is what I would say. And celebrate achievements. If certain employees are really benefited out of the program, so they should publicly recognize. I have been very vocal about recognizing leaders who really actively mentor and ensure that employees are really growing in the path of leadership. So by recognizing, by implementing sponsorship along with mentorship, by creating a structured mentorship program, it could really help in any organization to really act. So leaders can act in this way, is what I would say.
I completely agree with that, Pratima, because I think a lot of statistics also mention that organizations that promote mentorship have seen, a good profitability in their business because people feel valued, people feel involved in whatever they are doing. So it's a very critical aspect. Though practically, I've not seen many organizations doing it, but I think through this podcast, we can tell people that this is the way forward to nurture the talent that you have. Great. Now, when we talk about gender equality, right, some of the words are very common in the discussion, and one of them is biases. There are a lot of biases that we keep in our head, and that's what drives some of our decision making as well. So, what strategies do you suggest to recognize biases and then challenging those biases in the workplace? Have you faced biases in your career journey? I would love to hear that as well.
Absolutely, Aparna. I think biases, who has not gone through? I think at every level, every gender has actually gone through this unconscious bias. We call that unconscious bias. So
Yes.
I think bias in decision making is indeed a significant challenge today that can impact everything from hiring to performance reviews and promotions. So recognizing and addressing these biases is crucial to building a more equitable and inclusive workspace, in my view. So there could be like a few things which I can mention is like, we can have more focused biased awareness and training sessions. So even in my organization, I remember being the part of the leadership program. They had actually conducted a training on unconscious bias. So that it was quite a revelation for me. Many times we do things we're not aware of it, right? So with that, you're creating that unconscious bias in yourself. So we should have that awareness and training around bias, unconscious bias. So education is the first step in challenging bias, I would say. Providing regular trainings on unconscious bias helps employees and leaders recognize their own biases and understand how they influence decisions. So implement mandatory unconscious bias training for all employees, especially those in leadership and HR positions. So that can really help. Second is use blind recruitment and evaluation process. I think removing identifying information such as name, gender, race, etc. from the resume, okay, and any application. So this can also help reduce biases relating to stereotypes and assumptions. So implement blind recruitment processes where candidates identify details are actually hidden, and then the interview gets conducted. So that was one thing which I can talk about, and a few things which I would say that in my personal experience, I remember in my previous organization, not the current one, when I'd gone for the interview, and the time was more like a evening, time is what they were looking for, and that was a job which I wanted to take just after my maternity break, right? So that point in time, you want to be more confident and want just to take up whatever you get on your hand, and I was okay to go for the evening shift, and the hiring manager, actually, I don't knowingly or unknowingly, he showed that, look, you are a women, and for you, evening shoot is not something which is possible for you, right? So without even knowing that I am agreeable, I don't have a problem. He had that thing bias in his mind that I'm a woman, I'm a mother of twins, I will not be able to execute the job with perfection. So this is just a small example which I really wanted to share. So recognizing and challenging bias in the workplace ensures it requires ongoing effort. Number one, self-awareness and a willingness to change. So by adopting all these strategies, I'm sure, and giving more merit-based promotions, more can really help in removing this unconscious biases thing, Aparna.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I completely agree because even I have faced this in interviews where, earlier in my career, when my job demanded travel, frequent travel, I was disqualified because I'm a woman. So I know this very well. But I think the point that you made that, the resume should be kept in a way that the name, gender, race is not reflected. I think that's a great input because then that's when you're truly driving the diversity and inclusion part in your organization. So definitely that's what I'm going to take away for my own company that we are going to have resumes screened without all these details. I think that's a great step. Wow. So let's move on and look at the bigger picture of it. Great. So we spoke about unconscious bias, we spoke about inequality in workplaces. So it's not just restricted to corporates or few societies. It's, I think, global problem that everybody is facing. So what are your thoughts on the larger picture? What can government do or communities do or education systems do for that matter in bridging this gap and, empowering women to break the ceiling?
I think government, for them, sky's the limit because they are powerful, right? So government, communities, and educational systems they are powerful agents and in accelerating gender equality and breaking the glass ceiling, because by working together to dismantle societal and structural barriers, they can create an environment, is what, because they have that tools to do it, right? So for example, I can give you, like, they can enact and enforce progressive legislation. They can establish, implement and enforce laws against, I think there are a lot of laws is already existing, maybe a more focused one against workplace harassment, gender discrimination, unequal pay. They can also enact parental leave policies that encourage shared caregiving responsibilities between genders. So all these things we talk, right? But today, are this really existing? Or even if it is existing, how much awareness it is there? So that is one thing which they can do: create awareness of those legislation if it is already existing. Support women-owned enterprises. I think they can provide more tax incentives, grants, funding opportunities for women entrepreneurs. They can also support women's participations in economic forums, wherein they can encourage women entrepreneurs, invite them, and ask their views on multiple forums. So which can also represent women in a broader light, right? So couple of things which I wanted to talk. They can do many more things, but in the interest of time, I'm just touching this few things, couple. And from community perspective, I think communities really play a critical role in reshaping perceptions around traditional gender roles, right? So even communities can conduct awareness campaigns promoting gender equality, encourage male allies to participate in conversation and advocacy for gender inclusivity. So diverse D&I should not be the topic only for women. Even our male allies should actually talk volumes about it, and establish safe places for women and girls. I think there are multiple things which can be done in this space. So it's like, as I told, sky's the limit. They can create a support group, networking opportunities for women. So these are the few things which I wanted to call out with what government and communities can do.
Yeah, and I think with the POSH Act, things have started changing. And I think in terms of, initiatives by the organizations of bringing women back after a maternity break, and such initiatives will really help women to come back and restart their career if they're on a break. So yeah, I think there are things that exist, but there could, there could be even more things that we can do. A lot of women
Yes.
need this kind of initiatives to restart their career. Wow.
Oh yes,
Great.
I agree with you, Aparna.
Right. So we are at the last segment of our podcast, Fatima. So one question which I am very curious about to know is, so when you look back at your journey, right, what legacy do you hope to leave for, future generation of women leaders? How should they look at you and what you want to be remembered as?
And I think this answer will be a little longer, because there are lots which I aspire for to leave as a legacy, Aparna. So looking back at my journey, I
Would love
think
to
the
hear
legacy.
all of it.
All right, I will try my best. So, looking back at my journey, the legacy I hope to leave for the next generation would be like that centers around inclusivity, empathy, and power of authentic leadership. So, what I feel is like, I want to create a ripple effect where the next generation of leaders actively work to empower others, right? Especially those from underrepresented groups, by giving them access to opportunities that were often out of reach for them. So, future leaders will prioritize mentorship, sponsorship, and equitable opportunities for everyone, ensuring that all individuals have the chance to rise to their full potential. So that is the legacy number one, which I want to leave. Second is a culture of authentic leadership. So I hope that future leaders will embrace authenticity in a way that fosters connection, trust, and transparency. So leading by example, being vulnerable, and owning both strength and weakness will become the norm, not the exception. So it's very important that, while you embrace strength, you embrace weakness as well, and that becomes a normal. So you don't have to really see weakness as a different animal, right? So that's a part of any human being. So leaders who don't feel the need to hide behind fake it or pretend to be perfect, instead they lead with humility, curiosity, and right level of emotional intelligence. So that's the second thing which I wanted to really leave the legacy around it, on authentic leadership. Third is courage to challenge the status quo. So this is I hope the future leaders will never shy away from challenging systems that perpetuate inequality or inefficiency. Change won't happen by maintaining the status quo, right? It takes bold, courageous actions to break down barriers. So a generation of leaders who push boundaries and questions outdated norms and reshape system for the betterment of all is something which I would really want the future leaders to do, right? The courage to challenge the status quo. And the fourth would be the legacy of compassionate leadership. A topic very close to my heart. I think compassion is so important in today's world. Leadership isn't just about achieving goals; it's also about lifting others along the way, right? So I hope future leaders understand the value of compassion and empathy in leadership. Leaders who truly care for the well-being of their teams, who listen to their needs, and who prioritize work-life balance and mental health alongside performance. So these are the few things which I really want the future leadership to really learn, understand, and practice. So ultimately, I would say that I hope the legacy I leave behind is one of the positive transformation, where the leaders who follow are driven not just by results, but by the impact they can have on people, communities, and society at large. I want them to remember that leadership is a responsibility to uplift others and create a better and more equitable world. So I think it was a long answer, but I really wanted to cover those four topics of legacy because it's so important for me when it comes to leadership, like compassionate leadership, authentic leadership, empowerment leadership, and challenging the status quo. So these are the four things I want to leave behind.
That's quite inspiring with a lot of heavy words with a lot of meaning. So I'm sure that, if leaders embrace all these qualities that you're speaking about, it's going to be a world of full of happiness, I would say, especially the corporate world. And as you rightly said, leaders always think that they have to be perfect, they have to be seen as a strong people, but it's not the case. If they're authentic, if they're real, if they embrace their weakness as well, it becomes more easy for the teams also to connect with them because it's not a strong figure always standing in front of them. So I love that answer. Great. Absolutely loved it. Okay, so one last question for you today. If you could leave the audience with one actionable step to break their own glass ceiling, what would that be?
I think that would be in one line. If I have to answer, it would be own your worth and advocate for yourself. So that could really help you break all the glass ceilings which are around you. So invisible ones, I would say. So to elaborate that, so we sometimes what happens, right? We wait for someone else to notice our potential or to give us permission to succeed. But real progress begins when you recognize your value, confidently claim it, and take ownership of your own career trajectory. Right. So the first step they should do is whether it's be volunteering for high visibility projects, okay, asking for feedbacks or negotiating for your career advancement. Don't wait for the seat or at the table. Not at all. Create your own, right? Be vocal about your achievements and make sure you're advocating for yourself in every space you occupy. So this step is about shifting the mindset from waiting for someone else to give you a chance to actively creating your own path forward. Remember, you are your greatest advocate. And when you believe in your values and capabilities, others will start seeing it too. So breaking the glass ceiling is all about taking that first bold step to challenge self-doubt and step into your full potential. If you can constantly show up with that confidence, doors will begin to open for you. This is what I wanted to tell.
That's a lovely answer. Absolutely. Don't wait for anybody to notice you or uplift you. But yeah, you are your own advocate. Go be visible. I really like the word be visible. That's my biggest takeaway, I would say, from the podcast. So great. Thank you so much, Pratima. It was a wonderful talk with you. I think the last 40 minutes that we have spent together was so much, it gave us so much knowledge. It gave us so many statistics and examples. So I'm sure listeners of this podcast are going to benefit out of this. They are going to feel inspired with your story, with your examples and statistics. And I'm really hopeful that people enjoy this podcast episode. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Aparna, and thank you once again for giving me an opportunity to talk on your podcast. It was a great experience for me as well. I'm looking forward for more collaboration with you.
Likewise. Thank you so much. Have a great day ahead, Pratima. Thank you so much again.
Aparna, bye. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.